Whatever this is, this is rather strange. It's going to be short-lived, more than likely. What is this? Is this just like behind the scenes disc? Just gonna show like all the openings and everything?
Games are very popular in Japan. So when Sony Corporation planned to introduce its PlayStation console, they decided to offer a spectacular RPG to show off the new platform's capabilities. That was the beginning of the saga that is Ark the Lad.
Yeah, I'd guess. I mean, it did well on PlayStation. And it did kind of set up for things like Final Fantasy VII and Star Ocean and lots of other really solid RPGs. It also did start Persona, and I mean, it really showed the power of PlayStation.
The Ark the Lad series was produced in Japan by Sony's Ark Entertainment subsidiary. I personally think that the base of RPG game elements are story.
Is Ark Studios even still
and
around?
how well they are crafted and how interesting they are. So we need to make sure that those things are done right. Otherwise, even if the hardware improves, the game itself might.
I mean,
not
it's
improve
weird
drastically.
too because Sony kind of got a start with Sega CD and Saturn and stuff like that, where they were producing games. So I mean, with PlayStation, they were really prepared.
Pre-existing RPG games, and after I studied these existing RPGs, we still wanted something different from the RPG format, for which we had a lot of ideas. Of course, right now it is considered normal to do so.
Although,
but at that time, we wanted
I really
to
think that
include CG
Lunar is
movie
like the
segments,
breakthrough
and for the first
game
time,
that
use
really
voice effects
changed the way
when the
RPGs were
characters
treated.
involved in fight scenes. This was also the first attempt to link the saved data from Game 1 to Game 2. I believe we had such a deep treasure of ideas. At first, Ark was intended to be a single game.
Yeah,
But in
copying a lot of
1995, with the deadline
CRPG
for
things.
release looming, and so much work left to do, it was decided to break the ambitious project in two. Due to the fact that it was released as two games, we made the end of Ark 1 in such a fashion to be continued, which generated a lot of talk by people. When
Interesting.
Ark the Lad was made available, first we saw the screenshots.
Dengeki
To
PlayStation.
tell you the truth, at that time, I wasn't that surprised.
So this really
However,
isn't a
when we actually
game
played the games,
so much as
we were
a
very surprised.
like
It was a
thanks for
very
buying the Ark the
high-quality
Lad collection.
presentation, and the sounds and the characters' actual speaking and that kind of thing was placed all throughout the game. This kind of RPG never existed in a platform before the introduction of the PlayStation hardware.
You are a lie.
Battle maps. Most of
Lunar did that.
6 or 8 frames of animation detailing what they do, which allows the character
Even
to be
they
more
had
expressive,
portions of that.
Whereas most games usually use 2 or 3 frames.
Yeah, working
for each
designs.
character.
Ark the Lad 2 was released with great success in November of 1996. Fans could now take advantage
1996.
of PlayStation's unique memory system.
The memory system is really cool because you can bring saves from Ark 1.
But it is
forward to Ark
surprising
2,
how
and then Ark
people-
2 saves to Ark 3.
PlayStation really did
Doing that, you
change
get,
the way
things that
everything
you wouldn't
worked.
get if you just played
Let's
in
turn you
Ark
down a
2
little bit,
without playing
because
Ark
nobody
1.
cares what you're
By
saying.
bringing your saves forward, you get hidden events, secret items,
But
and the biggest
even
benefit of
Sega
that
CD
is
was such a
primarily
jump
you get to
in the right
control
direction,
the
and I remember people saying like, "Oh,
Memory
Sega
system
CD won't
also allowed
last,"
Sony to create a new related
and
Ark Monster
I really
Team.
feel like Sega CD and then towards Sega Saturn and 3DO and like bigger, more ambitious things was moving away from like the pixel games into
against another player,
really
and you can
big
fight for their
games.
monsters, or you can fight for items.
And I think all modern games really take after a lot of the early PlayStation and even some Sega CD games in terms of things they do.
This was a big success, and the Pokemon people did the same thing. I believe that Ark the Lad is the only game that can be used in this kind of way in the PlayStation format. If the same kind of thing becomes popular in America, we would be very happy. If we could let the champion American monster fight against the champion Japanese monster, it might yield an interesting result. I don't know if
Sure.
this is possible or not, but I think it would be very interesting.
it is weird looking back at now knowing what's possible and these people talking about what can't be possible. It's kind of bizarre.
I think most people who played Ark 1 successfully reached the end of the game, and I believe this game created a trend for more user-friendly RPG games.
User-friendly.
For the Maniac-type hardcore
I mean,
gamers
really
who
the big
purchased their
breakthrough
first
for PlayStation to be like the
PlayStation
absolute must-have was Final Fantasy
criticized
VII.
or
I'll be
complained
honest.
because it could only
I
get
mean,
about 10 hours
even
of
people I
play.
know who didn't play
Since we
games bought
created this
PlayStation
game
just to
with
play
pride
Final
and
Fantasy
confidence,
VII.
We never regretted making it. However, this
Just 'cause it
criticism
really was
caused
just
our
so
creative spirits some
outstanding.
concern. Therefore, we decided to make a game that had a wide application that anyone could play, but that could be utilized for up to 50 hours. That was the Ark 2 game.
Although you got all the haters that were like, GoldenEye is better, N64 is better. It's like, no, N64 is not better. Whoa, that was like rapey face going on there.
Sold like hotcakes. So Sony decided to continue the series, releasing Ark 3 in 1999. I heard from Mr. Akagawa that they were not originally planning on making Ark the Lad 3. Ark the
Well,
Lad 2 was considered to be the final
They
segment in
couldn't have
the
known this
series.
now, but they continued to
However,
make Ark
fans
the Lad
started to
for,
express their desire to
in my
make a
opinion,
sequel.
far longer
So
than
that
they
is
should
how we
have.
decided to make Ark
Especially
the
after
Lad
playing
3.
through Ark the Lad 2? Yeah, playing through Ark the Lad 2.
3部にわたる長いスト
This is
ー
a
リー
long story written in 3 parts. All 3 series have
Famitsu.
different main characters. Each main character has their own unique personality.
But it's also weird
The
too
story is kind of
because
dark.
games that were
However, each of these
amazing
main characters
and
opposes the
incredibly
bad forces.
good
I found it
during
interesting the way
PlayStation
main
1, like
characters
I loved
fight
Persona
against
and
the
Persona
forces,
2
the way they fight
and
stand up
Shin
for
Megami
justice.
games that came out on
Even these
PlayStation
characters
2,
were
but then
in
people
circumstances.
didn't pay any attention to it until Persona 4, and then Persona 5 brought so many people who were like, holy shit, these games are amazing.
Was created by
And
myself
it is
and
so
editor
bizarre.
whom I consulted at the
I remember playing
And
Persona
person
2
who
on
got me
PlayStation
involved
1,
in
and people were like,
You were involved in
this game doesn't look that good or whatever, and now like they post like, oh my god, Persona 5 changed my life, and I'm just like,
to save the world.
ah.
They don't know it. Then at the end of 1, the story changes perspective, which is sort of unique and really
But-
cool.
I don't know.
Because the story
It is
connected
strange
from
that
1 to 2,
these
the
kind of
character who
PlayStation
was
1
the
games
hero
that
in
I thought
1
were
comes
amazing
out
are
again
just
as a
making
hero.
resurgences, and
Then it
people
isn't
like
very interesting as a
having an
story.
erection
That's
for the
what I
new
think.
Final Fantasy VII.
When we show that different angle of the story, then the
But
story will
Ark
have
the
more
Lad is kind of
contrast.
lost to time,
That is the sort of effect we tried to achieve.
mostly because Working Designs is defunct, which it sucks because Working Designs was like one of the
Ark
best
1 advances with the main story alone.
for
It's not
localization and even their own
Ark
games
2,
and
the
such.
style
I
changes a
mean,
little.
Lunar,
Besides
Grow
the main
Lancer,
story,
I mean, there's a
there's
whole
also a
list of
sub-story called
great
Guild
games that they
Work.
made that
Ark
were just
3,
so
we put that Guild Work
underdone,
into
and
the
now
subsystem
everybody
in
that's
Ark
tried to
3
remake them
as
has
the
made
main story
absolute
in
garbage
Ark
parts.
3. By accepting the Guild Work, it causes the main story to develop.
It's so complex.
Also,
There's so
making
many
those are
games,
so
many
weird.
extra things, so many side quests or jobs to take on that just playing through the storyline, you'd be missing half the game.
そのサブ
In Ark 3, there is a place in the sub-scenario
His
where you
hair,
have to clear
it looks like a
certain events in order
microphone.
for
Like,
the
I want
hero
to touch it.
become your partner. There are
Is it
also
fake?
some events you cannot see unless you fail at that juncture. Sometimes by failing, you can see more interesting or funny events as a consequence. So in that sense, there are some hidden avenues in the game.
Yeah.
Love, hate, good, evil, death, life, rebirth, destruction. I mean, all the major themes are touched on in a much more serious and realistic way than most or all are.
Realistic way? You had like the Rainbow Bridge gang that was like dancing and being ridiculous.
See it pan over, and everybody gets shot. That was just really cool. They all just fall down.
I like how he had a
and
PlayStation 2
down.
hat.
I totally didn't expect that in an
That's
RPG. A lot of death.
just
A
weird.
lot of blood. A lot of people getting crushed. I like the one scene where the guy gets slammed against the wall and turns into slime. That was really cool.
Spoiler alert.
I like gruesome things.
Okay, it's funny that this is a PlayStation 1 game, quote unquote, and he's wearing a PlayStation 2 hat, which is just just freaking weird.
There's so many characters in the game.
キャラクターたちにやっぱり
I try to make the characters as lovable characters. It's not like we love only one main character exclusively, but each different character will be loved.
Well,
Most
I mean,
of them
I do have to
have
say Ark the Lad at least had well-rounded
wronged
characters. They all felt like they
by
could
the
be
dark force,
people.
and have
They weren't like
to,
one-dimensional
join
tropes.
the group to save the world and get a little revenge in between.
Ark, in
She looks like one of my
series,
teachers in
is
high school.
driven by the loss of his father. And he doesn't know a lot about his dad, but the blizzard that his dad predicted comes true 10 years later, and Ark grabs a sword and heads
Okay, we don't need spoilers.
And that runs through the whole story until he finds out what happened to his dad. Kukru's motivation is she's a descendant of the Sacred Clan, the Clan of White. She has to stay as a member of her clan and hold this seal that's holding this darkness, this
Okay.
evil, in place as long as she can until Ark gets back to stop it.
トッシュっていうのは
There is a character called Tosh that we had certain grand ambitions for.
Oh, Tosh.
I believe that popular supporting characters in
Th-
RPG have certain specific features and types that become popular.
He's like
I
a
don't know what the
Yakuza
proper
gangster
phrase in English would be,
from
but a
like
character with certain
Imperial
powers,
times.
The dirty hero, but in the end he gravitates to the side of justice. This is the type of character that I very much wanted to create.
Gogan is very old.
Although
more than
he
2,000
apparently
years.
sucks
He was one
in
of
the
the
first
Brave
one.
Seven.
He was okay in the
Advance
second
the
one.
Evil of Darkness. The time before, as Ark, when you start your quest, you go in and get Gogan because he's going to be your guide to find the 5 stones you need to unseal the Ark and help save the world.
こんなキャラクター多分今まで
Characters like Chongara have never existed in any RPG game before. The person who had worked on
Well,
creating
just about every
characters
character
this
you create in a game hasn't existed in an RPG
had a
game
body
before.
that looks just like Chongara. So we basically used him as a model. So henceforth, this character became a rather memorable character for me.
Just like with Ark, Elk is also driven.
All right.
Because, you know,
I think I've
as
had
a
enough of
child,
this.
He sees his family.
This is just spoiling Ark the Lad 1. So let's move on.
He's driven by hate and the need